Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I of course am just another heavy metal maniac, and today I am very excited to bring you all my long delayed part 2 to my band versus band video where I pick between the bands that you guys suggest to me. I uploaded part 1 of this back in December, which feels like an eternity ago at this point. And yeah, I meant to get around to this much earlier, but admittedly I just kind of forgot about it, and I just kind of left it on the back burner a little bit too long until someone messaged me on Instagram. I was like, hey, are you going to do that band versus band part 2 thing? And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should probably get on that. So yeah, apologies for the delay. I meant to do this much earlier, but again, I just kind of forgot about it just because I've been busy with a lot of things going on. But now I'm finally getting it done, so I did create another community post asking for suggestions for part 2. I did also, there's also some other comments that people left on my original post and also the video I made for my original band versus band, so I'm going to go through those first and then we'll go through the comments on the post. So our first set of questions is from the original post for part 1 that someone did after I already posted that video. So from Jazzu or Jazzu FC, this person asks Sodom versus Creator, which we did in part 1. The answer is Sodom. But this next question was not in the first part. Immortal versus Emperor. This is a little bit trickier because I love Emperor. Emperor was one of the bands that got me into black metal, but Immortal is the band that obviously has had a much longer and more kind of, I guess, relevant career. They have like Emperor, Golden Discography, but they only have 4 albums, whereas Immortal has a bunch of albums that all kick ass in my opinion. So for me, the answer for this one is Immortal. I love Emperor, but it's Immortal. Immortal's like top 3 black metal band of all time for me, so yeah, it's Immortal. Alright, so someone, originally there were 2 like comments for part 2 that were left on like the video that I made, but it appears one of them has been taken down. But there is still one new set of questions that was left under part 1 of this little series I made. So from, oh dear god, I'm going to butcher this name, Heveti Christus Dud. If you were watching this, I am so sorry. I know I completely butchered that. But it looks like he's gone with all kind of black metal, so yeah, let's just go through these choices. So his first question is Primordial or Falkenbach. Really enjoy both bands, both kind of that Viking, kind of pagan, folk, black metal, both very similar. Personally, I prefer Falkenbach a little bit more than Primordial. I just really like Falkenbach. I just really like their approach. You know, again, black metal, Viking metal, whatever you want to call it. I just really think they're really good at that style. Primordial is really good too, but I prefer Falkenbach just a little bit more. Next up, battle of the big Swedish black metal bands, Watain versus Marduk. This is an easier one for me to say Marduk because I fucking love Marduk. Watain is really good, don't get me wrong, they have some really solid albums. I think they're a pretty solid band. But Marduk is, god, I just love Marduk. Like, just that, you know, blistering, unrelenting style of black metal. Obviously I did a ranking for Marduk. I love Marduk, so for me the answer is Marduk. Next up, Lunar Aurora versus the Ruins of Beverest. I will be perfectly honest, I have not listened to much Ruins of Beverest. I know that's one band that I should be familiar with, but I'm just not. I will get around to them eventually. It's just, you know, there's so many bands out there, and yeah, Ruins of Beverest, I just have not heard enough of them to really give you an opinion. So for me, that's going to be Lunar Aurora by default, because I do really like Lunar Aurora. I think they're a really awesome, like, kind of atmospheric black metal band. I don't know, I just think Lunar Aurora is awesome, so yeah, Lunar Aurora by default. Okay, but now this next question sucks. Sargeist or Satanic Warmaster? Oh god, this one's hard. Because I know we had Sargeist versus Horna on the first one, and Sargeist won that one, but this is tough because these are like 2 of the best like Finnish black metal bands. Oh god, okay, this one's actually really hard. I might lean a little bit more towards Satanic Warmaster, honestly, just because I feel like Satanic Warmaster has a little bit more variety in there. Like, well, the Satanic Warmaster definitely has a little more variety than Sargeist does, but okay, for now I'm gonna go with Satanic Warmaster. That's my pick. That's really tough though. I love Sargeist, Let the Devil In, like one of my favorite albums ever, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Satanic Warmaster for this one. Alright, yeah, that was hard. Next one, Carpathian Forest versus Urgahal. I will be perfectly honest again, I have not listened to much in the way of Ergahol. I'm aware of who they are, but I just really have not dived much into them. So for me, it's Carpathian Forest by default, because I like Carpathian Forest. I think they're a really solid, black metal band. So yeah, haven't listened to much Ergahol, but I will get around to it. Next up, he has Summoning versus Agalloch. Oh, excuse me. For me, this is kind of an easier one to say. Summoning. Agalloch is really good, don't get me wrong, especially Pale Folklore. I think that debut is absolutely amazing. The Mantle is really good too. Agalloch is really solid, but Summoning, Summoning to me are just like the masters of epic, atmospheric black metal. So really, for me, Summoning, it's Summoning. Pretty easy one. Agalloch's solid, but man, like Mina's Morgul and yeah, all those albums, you can't top those in my opinion. And then his final question is Windir versus Dissection. This one's a little bit trickier. I think both these bands are really good. They're both kind of in the same space, although like kind of that melodic black metal, but Windir definitely has a lot more like kind of folk elements in their music as well. Dissection's also kind of got a lot more of the melodic death influence in their sound as well. I think I'm gonna go with Windir, because Windir, all 4 albums are fucking just amazing. I love all 4 of those albums. Dissection, first 2 albums, awesome, legendary. The 3rd album, not that great. So yeah, for me, the answer is going to be Windir. All right, now we are moving on to the questions that were left under the community post I made for this. So these are all suggestions left by you, good people. So we're going to be starting off with the first question from Silent Endless Nothing, and they ask Bathory versus Venom. This is definitely an interesting matchup, because obviously these are both kind of the big first wave black metal bands. Bathory, I arguably like the first like kind of true black metal band, you could argue. I would kind of argue that a little bit, but yeah, both absolutely iconic bands, but they're both very much in the same space for me because I only really like a small portion of each of these bands' discographies. Like Venom, love the early stuff. Like I love, Welcome to Hell, black metal. I think Primeval is a fucking underrated album. Not much grabbed me after that, like those early, like first 5 albums or so though. And Bathory, I only really like the black metal Bathory plus Bloodfire Death, which is kind of more in the Viking realm, but still kind of black metal-y. Not much after that really grabs me at all. Like, I know a lot of people really love the Viking Bathory stuff, but it just really does not click with me much at all. So for me though, I would probably go with Bathory, just because I think Bathory, just, again, in that small window of material that I like from Bathory, I think I like that more than Venom's small window of material that I like. So yeah, for me, I'm gonna go with Bathory. So the next getting all tongue twisted here. So the next set of questions from Mr. Robert Sparling. What's up, Robert? Broken Hope versus Suffocation. Okay, this might get some people mad at me, but honestly, I have to go with Broken Hope. Again, that's probably gonna get some people really upset at me because Suffocation, don't get me wrong. I love Suffocation. They are the pioneers of like brutal death metal. They pretty much laid the foundations for everything in that genre. But for me, I just kind of I find myself listening to Broken Hope more than Suffocation. And with Suffocation, like the first 3 albums are fantastic, and then after that, it's not that they went to shit necessarily. It's just that those albums aren't anywhere on the same level as those first 3 in my opinion. Whereas Broken Hope is more kind of consistent, I'd argue, minus maybe Grotesque Blessings. That album's kind of a dud, but yeah, Broken Hope for me, I fucking love Broken Hope. Next question he has is Obscura versus Beyond Creation. I think I'm just gonna have to kind of go undecided on this one. I really don't listen to enough of either to really form an opinion. It's just not really not my style. I think I'm not really the world's biggest technical death metal fan, an Obscura is kind of like a continuation of Necrophagist from kind of what I understand, and I'm not really a fan of Necrophagist, to be perfectly honest. And Beyond Creation, I've listened to them, but I'm just really not a big fan of that style. So for me, I kind of have to go undecided on this one. And the final question Robert Sparling has is Gwar versus Suicidal Tendencies. This is kind of an easy one for me to say. Suicidal Tendencies. Again, Gwar, still a band I've heard I've heard some songs, but I have yet to, but not really enough to like give a full opinion on like saying like, yes, this is like good gore, bad gore, whatever. But Suicidal Tendencies, I mean, that was pretty much the band that got me into like crossover thrash. So yeah, Suicidal Tendencies for me. All right, now the next set of questions from Jake Embry, 7159, and he left quite a long list. Exodus versus Testament is his first question, and this is tricky. Both of the two big Bay Area thrash bands, two of the big, like, I mean, I've been listening to both these bands for like years now at this point, because I was really, really into thrash when I was younger. Still love thrash, but yeah, this was a kind of a big one for, these two were both pretty big. In terms of like, which one is better though? I really don't know. It could go either way, honestly. Like, maybe. Oh man, I actually don't know. This one's tough. This is a tough one. I'm gonna say Testament for now, because I feel like Testament is just kind of more consistent. Like I'm gonna go with Testament now. I love Exodus, but I'm gonna go with Testament. And now, next set of questions. Vital Remains versus Incantation. Fuck. This one is also hard, because these are like two of my favorite death metal bands. Honestly, this might be a bit of a controversial pick again, but I am gonna go with Vital Remains, because I love Vital Remains. I just really like how Vital Remains, like, they change up their sound on, like, every album, and I feel like they're just really, I just think they're really, really awesome. So, yeah, I love Incantation. I do love Incantation, but I think I'm going to go with Vital Remains on this one, because I think Vital Remains are just one of the most underrated and best old-school death metal bands out there. Next question, Dark Throne versus Bathory. This is an easier one for me to say. Dark Throne, because, again, Bathory, the thing I mentioned earlier, only really like the first 4 albums. Everything else doesn't really grab me that much. But Dark Throne, I love most of Dark Throne's albums. There's a few I'm not big on, but there's most Dark Throne I do enjoy. Next up, oh god, this one's hard. Slayer versus Sepultura. Oh my god, why? Man, these are like two of the biggest, like, most important bands for me getting into like the more heavy side of metal. Slayer or Sepultura. Oh, fuck, man. Can I take both? I don't want to. I love both of these bands so much. Okay, this is not easy to come to this decision, but I think I'm gonna go with Slayer, just by a little bit. I love Sepultura, man. Like all the Max stuff, even some of like Derek Green stuff I love, but I don't know, Slayer, like the first 4 Slayer albums, like, or actually no, first 5 Slayer albums, I mean, like, God tier, untouchable albums they are. So yeah, for me, it's Slayer, but that's not an easy choice. Alright, next question, Dark Angel versus Death Angel. The two Bay Angels of the Bay Area. This one's a little bit easier. I think I'd go with Death Angel for this one. Dark Angel is solid. I do enjoy Dark Angel. I like all their albums pretty much. But Death Angel, because I love Death Angel. Like, Ultraviolence is one of my favorite thrash albums, like, ever, honestly. And the last 2 that are all like the stuff since they reformed and have been putting out since, like, it's fucking awesome too. Like the last 2 especially, I fucking love those albums. I wouldn't mind getting a new Death Angel album soon. So yeah, for me, it's gonna be Death Angel. Next up, Atheist versus Cynic. This is kind of an easier one for me to say Atheist, because I like the first Atheist album, Piece of Time, which is, you know, kind of more thrashy, much more kind of death metal-y type of album. Cynic, I don't like Cynic, really. I do respect the hell out of them for just being, you know, awesome musicians, but yeah, I've never gotten it. Just does not click with me. Who knows, maybe it will one day, but for now, I'm not a fan of Cynic, and I only like the first Atheist album, so yeah, for me, the answer is Atheist. Next question he has is Napalm Death versus Carcass. This is also kind of an easy one for me to say Carcass, because Napalm Death, I only like a pretty small window of Napalm Deaths. Discography I like kind of when they were more of a death metal band, like Harmony Corruption, Utopia Banished, and Fear, Emptiness, and Despair. Those are the 3 Napalm Death albums that I do like. I do kind of want to give their discography more of a chance because I do kind of want to maybe get into more grindcore because I feel like I could, and I feel obviously Napalm Death are like the pioneers of that style, so I feel like I should probably give them more of a chance, but for now, I definitely enjoy Carcass more than Napalm Death. Next up, he has Metal Church versus Forbidden. This is an easy one for me to say. Metal Church. Forbidden, really solid, awesome Bay Area thrash. Like the first two albums, love those albums. But dude, Metal Church, I love Metal Church. Like the first two Metal Church albums are like two of the greatest metal albums ever made, in my opinion. So yeah, Metal Church, fairly easy one. And the final question he has is Kreator versus Overkill. Not cool, man. Love both bands. I think I would probably go with Kreator, though. Love Overkill, but I think Kreator might be just the slightly better band. Love Overkill, but yeah, it's going to be Kreator for me. Well, Jake, that was a really, really solid list. Some pretty diabolical choices you had there. All right, next up, our next set of questions from Average Video Game Enjoyer. He says, well, alrighty then. Well, alrighty then, indeed. I Hate God versus Acid Bath. Dude, okay, yeah, you're not, I remember I did say you weren't allowed to comment again for part 2 and the first video. You're not allowed to comment for part 3, okay? Because this is fucking evil of you. Ugh, man, like, I love I Hate God, I do, but I think I gotta give this one to Acid Bath because Acid Bath are the band that got me into sludge metal, so if it wasn't for Acid Bath, I probably would have never gotten into I Hate God, but I love I Hate God, man. Yeah, that's not easy, but yeah, probably Acid Bath for this one. Next up, some Funeral Doom, Shape of Despair versus Evoken. Both really, really good bands. I enjoy both of them quite a bit. I think I'd probably go with Evoken for this one. Shape of Despair is really good, but I think I like Evoken a little bit more. They're kind of, I don't know, a little bit heavier, just a little bit more kind of on the, you know, just the very, very heavy kind of side of Funeral Doom. Kind of bordering on like Death Doom and some of their stuff. So yeah, for me, probably Evoken. Next up, Trouble or Solitude Aeternus. I love Trouble. I love Trouble to death, but I'm probably gonna go with Solitude Aeternus. Just because Solitude Aeternus is one of the most important bands ever for me, like, getting into metal. Like, yeah, Solitude Aeternus was huge, huge, huge for me. I love Trouble, but Solitude Aeternus, I think, is the winner of this round. Next up, Nile versus the Beatles. Ladies and gentlemen, the world's biggest fucking apple and the world's biggest fucking orange. It's Nile. I'm not a Beatles fan. I've never been a Beatles fan. I understand their place in, like, history and all that and whatever, like, yada yada yada, but I've just never liked the Beatles. But Nile, I mean, Nile whoops ass, come on. They're one of the best death metal bands out there. It's Nile. It's Nile. Next up, Crowbar versus Down. I think this might have been in part 1. I don't remember, though. I think Crowbar, just in case it wasn't in part 1. So yeah, it's pretty easy. You know, without Crowbar, there wouldn't have been a Down. So yeah, it's Crowbar. Next up, Hypocrisy versus Bloodbath. Ooh, this is interesting. Kind of the more melodic death metal versus kind of both Swedish death metal, but kind of different ends of the Swedish death metal spectrum. Like Hypocrisy are kind of the more melodic, sci-fi themed death metal. Bloodbath are just kind of the more, you know, disgusting, like HM2, kind of entombed dismember worship kind of thing. I think I prefer Bloodbath a little bit more. Hypocrisy, they're solid. I think they got some really solid albums, but I just like Bloodbath. You know, I just like Bloodbath. They're just a solid, you know, death metal band, and yeah. So for me, the answer is going to be Bloodbath. All right, second to last question Average Video Game Enjoyer has on his list. Sacramentum versus the Gates of Ishtar. I will have to be perfectly honest again, have not listened to much in the way of Gates of Ishtar. I've heard many, many good things about them. I have to get around to them, but I just haven't yet. I know that there's like they're like really, really kind of cool, kind of cult status, like melodic death metal, but I just have not listened to much of them. So for me, the answer is going to be Sacramentum, kind of by default, because I know Sacramentum, but so yeah, Sacramentum. And the final question he has is Sargeist versus Oranssi Pazuzu. This is kind of an easy one for me to say. Sargeist, I'm not a big Oranssi Pazuzu fan. I don't know. They're just that kind of like sort of weird, kind of avant-garde black metal stuff. I don't really know. I'm just not really I'm not really big on Oronzi Pazuzu, so yeah, for me, the answer is going to be Sargeist, definitely. All right, next up from, oh, god damn it. I meant to look up how to say your name, because you told me it was the word future in Polish. F. Schuzer, however you say that. Again, I'm sorry, I meant to look it up before I did this, but I just forgot, because I'm dumb. But he also left a list, Deep Purple versus Rainbow. Now, Rainbow is really good. For the first 3 albums, I am not a huge fan of the stuff with Graham Bonnet or Joe Lynn Turner. I really only like the Dio stuff with Rainbow. So for me, it's going to be Deep Purple, because Deep Purple is obviously the much more kind of relevant band that has had a much longer, more sustained career. Hell, the last Deep Purple album I liked a lot. I thought that album was an absolute banger. All right, next up, Misfits versus Discharge. This is another kind of easy one for me to say. Misfits. Discharge, I know, are like, you know, super influential. Obviously, like pretty much all the old school thrash metal bands loved Discharge's debut. I've listened to it. I think it's pretty good. You know, it's really solid kind of, you know, D-beat hardcore punk debut. I've also heard the second album, Grave New World, which is like, yeah, that album sucks. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that album. But yeah, Misfits, because, again, I'm not, like, the world's biggest punk fan, but I do like the Misfits. They're just, you know, fun, like, horror punk, so yeah. I like the Misfits. Alright, next up, some more kind of classic new Wabam stuff here. Raven versus Tank. Really like both bands. Tank is awesome, but Raven is also awesome. And I think I like Raven a little bit more. I don't know, I just kind of like Raven's, like, kind of more aggressive, kind of speed metal style, and yeah, Raven, I just think Raven's really solid. So for me, the answer is going to be Raven. And the final question he has, the two big Canadian thrash bands, or well, 2 of the big Canadian thrash bands, Razor or Sacrifice. This is tough. Because Razor, I love Razor. Like, dude, Evil Invaders, Violent Restitution, fucking Shotgun Justice, those albums are amazing. But I think up against Sacrifice, I think Sacrifice wins, because Sacrifice is consistently awesome. They have no bad albums. I think this new album is going to be absolutely awesome. Razor has some stinkers. Like the last Razor album, I just don't like that album at all. Decibels, that album is just like the most boring groove metal album ever made, honestly. Or maybe not the most boring, because I mean Massacre by Promise exists, but yeah, Decibels is not great. But yeah, Razor, I love Razor. I love Razor, but Sacrifice for me. Next up, from frequent commenter, Mr. Jason Boardman, Entombed versus Dismember. Now, I do talk a lot of love for Entombed. Left Hand Path is obviously one of the greatest metal albums of all time. But I will acknowledge that Dismember, I think, is the better band of the 2. Dismember is just more consistent. They don't have a single dud in their catalog, in my opinion. Entombed has a couple stinkers, like namely Same Difference, and even the final Entombed album before it became like Entombed AD was not great. So yeah, for me, Dismember. Next up, Immolation versus Vader. This one's hard because 2 very different styles of like death metal. Because Vader obviously is just kind of more like thrashy, aggressive kind of style of death metal. Immolation's kind of more the weird, like kind of dissonant, nightmarish kind of death metal. I think maybe I'm gonna go with Immolation on this one. I love Vader. Vader's awesome, but yeah, I think I like Immolation a little bit more. But still, Vader rules, make no mistake. Probably my favorite Polish metal band, like, ever. Next up, Gravedigger versus Accept, kind of the 2 big German classic metal bands, but I mean, Gravedigger does kind of lean more on the power metal side a little bit. Probably Accept for this one. Gravedigger, they do just write the same album over and over again. Like, they've got hardcore AC/DC syndrome. To an extent, Accept kind of has that too, but I don't know. Gravedigger, honestly, a lot of their albums I feel like are a little bit kind of interchangeable, but I do still love a lot of their stuff, like, you know, Excalibur and those albums, but I think I like Accept more. So yeah, for me, Accept. Next up, Enslaved versus Immortal. Easy one for me, Immortal. Enslaved is solid. I think, I love Enslaved's, like, old logo, too. I think that's just absolutely amazing. Enslaved is solid. They're definitely more on the prog side, kind of proggy black metal side, whereas Immortal is just kind of the more straightforward black metal with a lot of, like, thrash influence, too. Yeah, but I love Immortal. Again, it's like top 3 black metal band ever for me, so, yeah, Immortal. Next up, At the Gates versus Hypocrisy. This is a little bit trickier. I'll admit that neither of these bands are like super like high up for me in terms of like my favorite like mellow death or like death metal bands. I do enjoy them, but they're both not particularly high up on my list when it comes to like my favorite melodic death metal bands. I probably give this one to At the Gates. Sorry, Hypocrisy, that's the second time you've lost. Jeez, I feel bad for you. But I'd probably give it to At the Gates though, because I feel like I like At the Gates just a little bit more. Slaughter of the Soul, I mean, that's an amazing album. No one can deny the impact of that album. Hell, I even like some of their more later stuff. But yeah, At the Gates wins this one for me. Next up, Undeaf versus Gatecreeper. This is going to be kind of Gatecreeper by default. Have not listened to Undeaf yet. That's still one band I kind of need to get into. I've heard a lot of good things about them, but yeah, Gatecreeper, because I do enjoy Gatecreeper. I know a lot of people kind of give them shit, but I think they're solid. I do like them. So yeah, for me, Gatecreeper. And the final question Jason Boardman has is Autopsy versus Acefix. Easy one for me to say, Acefix, because Acefix is my favorite death metal band ever. And they wrote my favorite death metal album of all time, Last One on Earth. I love Autopsy. I do love Autopsy, but up against Acefix, sorry. It's like any death metal band versus Acefix. It's Acefix, I'm sorry. Alright, next up from Nico Skistas 7131. Archgoat versus Behemoth. This is easy. Archgoat, definitely. Behemoth. Behemoth have some solid stuff. They have some solid albums. Like, I do really enjoy, like, The Satanist and, like the more kind of, like, strip, kind of more death metal-y stuff. I really like the early, like, more strip black metal stuff, like, you know, Storming Near the Baltic, stuff like that. But the last two Behemoth albums have not been great, so admittedly my expectations for this next Behemoth album aren't that high. The Shit of God, that's just, like, the fucking cringiest album title I've ever read in my life. So yeah, Archgoat for me, just because, you know, I love Archgoat. This next one's a little bit trickier, though. Decapitated versus Nile. Little bit trickier. Good matchup, because these are both very similar, like, kind of, you know, technical death metal that's still, like, kind of on the heavier side, too. I really like, I think I'd go with Nile. I really like Decapitated, but Nile, I think it's just kind of the better band, slightly. But, I mean, the last Nile album fucking whooped ass. So yeah, for me, Nile. Next up, Portal versus Ulcerate. This is an easy one for me to say, Ulcerate. I mean, Ulcerate, they did put out my favorite album of 2024, so yeah, they have that going for them. Admittedly, I can't get into Portal. Like, again, it's kind of like that same kind of like Oranssi Pazuzu type thing where it's just, you know, that kind of weird, like, dissonant, avant-garde-y type shit where it's just kind of like a wall of, like, weird noise. I just don't really like that stuff. So for me, not a fan of Portal, but I do enjoy, I love Ulcerate. Like, again, they broke my favorite album of 2024 was Cutting the Throat of God. So yeah, Ulcerate. Alright, next up, I Hate God versus Iron Monkey. This is another kind of an easier one for me. I Hate God. Iron Monkey, really solid sludge metal, you know, from the UK. Last album, again, really good. But I Hate God is, you know, I Hate God. Really, yeah, I Hate God. Love I Hate God. I Hate God lost against Aspef, so I gotta give them at least one. Next up, System of a Down versus Deftones. I am not a System of a Down fan. I did used to listen to them, like, when I was younger and kind of more in my new metal stuff, because I thought they were, like, funny. I thought, like, the songs were, like, funny, but obviously, you know, me not realizing they had, like, serious, like, socio-political messages and stuff. But yeah, for me, as the years have gone on, I've just liked System of a Down less and less. It's mainly the vocals that get me. I'm not a fan of Serj Tankian's vocals at all. I'm not a fan of Darren's vocals. I think those are even worse. But I do still like the Deftones. I got into Deftones again when I was in my whole kind of, you know, new metal phase, still just, you know, discovering heavier music, and Deftones was a big part of that, and I still love the Deftones. Like, I'll still happily go back and jam albums like Adrenaline or White Pony or, you know, any Deftones really, because I do like the Deftones. And the final question from Nico is Profanatica or Mystifier? Good matchup, because these are both very similar kind of, you know, like first wave black death kind of mash up a little bit. Personally, I prefer Mystifier a little bit more. Profanatica is really solid. Again, really solid kind of US black metal, death, black, whatever you want to call them. Mystifier, though, I think I like a little bit more Mystifier, because Mystifier is absolutely awesome. Alright, and the final group of questions from Mr. Tainted Lord 87. Dark Tranquility versus Mors Principum Est. Dark Tranquillity for me wins this one. Moore's Principal Mess I've heard little bits and pieces of, but not really enough to give like a full-fledged like opinion on them. So for me, it's going to be Dark Tranquillity, definitely. Shadows Fall versus Bleeding Through. I kind of have to abstain from this one. I don't listen to enough of Eivor to really form an opinion. I know these are both kind of, I want to say metalcore, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they're both kind of in the metalcore realm, but I really don't listen to enough of either of them. Alright, but this one is a little bit diabolical. Immolation versus Incantation. I'm surprised this matchup wasn't, I'm surprised no one made this matchup for the first part of this. Yeah, these are both the big, kind of just disgusting East Coast death metal bands. These bands are always getting, you know, compared to one another, and it's not hard to see why, but Immolation or Incantation. Honestly, it could, like, change on a daily basis, but for now, I'm gonna go with Immolation. I love Incantation, but I think Immolation is just maybe the slightly better band with a slightly stronger discography. And plus, they have Ross Dolan, who I think is like one of my favorite like death metal vocalists ever. I think he's what, number 2 when I did my favorite death metal vocalist video. I just love Ross Dolan as a vocalist. So yeah, for me, Immolation. All right, next up, Vader versus Decapitated, both coming back for a second round. This time facing off against each other. Yeah, battle of the big Polish death metal bands. Personally, I think I'm gonna go with Vader. Again, I love Decapitated, but Vader fucking crushes. Vader rules. That's all you really need to say. Vader rules. Next up, Cattle Decapitation versus Vehemence. Really interesting matchup here, because we have the Cattle Decap were kind of the more progressive death metal, I guess. Well, they started off as more like gore grind, and then they became death grind, but now I'd argue they're just like a more like progressive, kind of technical death metal band. Versus Vehemence, who are like, you know, kind of that heavy melodic death metal, like kind of very much in the same vein as like Intestine Ballism. I really like Vehemence, but I think I'm going to go with Cattle Decap on this one. Vehemence, you know, again, they're solid. They have some really good albums, but, or well, they have, again, I think they have like, what, 4 albums? So yeah, again, fairly short discography. So I'm going to go with Cattle Decapitation, because I do enjoy Cattle Decapitation. Next up, Exhumed versus Vile Remains. This is kind of an easier one, I guess. I like Exhumed. Again, it's carcass worship. It's, you know, just fun splatter death grind. But Vital Remains for me, just because, again, I'm a Vital Remains fanboy. That I feel like that's well established on this channel. I love Vital Remains. So yeah, for me, Vital Remains. And the final question of this video is the Black Dahlia Murder versus Allegion. I'm not 100% sure how to say that band's name. Black Dahlia Murder, for me, again, Allegion. Have not listened to a whole ton of Allegion, so yeah, for me, Black Dahlia Murder, because I do like the Black Dahlia Murder. And, well, that concludes part 2 of my band versus band viewer response edition. Now, I do want to do something like this again in the future, but next time I think I want to do a band versus band video, or not band versus band. We've already done that. I meant album versus album. So instead of, you know, choosing between 2 bands, you guys would choose between 2 albums. Boy, because some of these questions you guys put here are already pretty difficult, so I can't imagine what suggestions you guys are gonna come up with for the album versus album video whenever I get around to making that. But yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. So again, some pretty tough choices. I hope you guys all enjoyed playing along at home, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you made it to the end of this video, you are awesome, and I appreciate you. Do consider leaving a like. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment down below. Tell me, do you agree with my choices for these bands? Do you disagree with my choices? Let me know down in the comments. If you are not subscribed, do consider subscribing, because I do have a lot more content coming your way. And, well, that about does it. I am just another Heavy Metal Maniac. I'll see you all sometime in the future. In the meantime, I hope you take care and have a great day. So long.